So good morning. We're going to start half term 5 issues and impact 1 today, which is all about malware security and robustness. So please do make sure that you've rated your confidence on each of these 3 learning objectives. So quite excited about this. We get to learn how some of these pieces of malware work. We won't look at the specifics for what you need for the exam, but I will give you some examples that you can go away and research. It ties in really nicely with the Cyber Centurion competition for identifying vulnerabilities, and we'll look at how we can avoid these. I'll also point you in the right direction of a couple of jobs involved in this sector, which I think is really exciting. So today we want to make sure that you understand what a Cyberattack is. We want to make sure that we know that it's not just that it can cost money and be an irritation. It can also cause damage to a company, and there are legal implications. So we want to know what we can do that is good and bad. We know what we want to know what people can do that is legal and illegal, so that you can stay the right side of the law. We need to make sure that we know what the threats are, and we can characterize them and categorize them in the different categories for malware. And then we can work out how to mitigate and prevent those threats using anti-malware. The big thing that we'll do, or that you'll do as a result of this topic, is make sure that you keep your computer up to date so that you can avoid all of these. So when you think of malware, you probably think of viruses. The vast majority of attacks now probably don't involve that much code at all. It can just be people guessing people's passwords or social engineering attacks. So it can be a very highly technical threat, or it can be just a human threat. And we want to cover both in this topic. So we just saw an example of Twitter with a cyber attack. That was one that was not particularly technical. I'd like to discuss with the people next to you. I'll pause the video. Why might people do this? So at Twitter, people took over people's accounts and they all tweeted similar instructions to send Bitcoin and to try and, say why they did it. 3 reasons. See if you can discuss with the people next to you. Why would people do something like that? Yes, we've talked about money. It's a big one. Influence, power, and bragging rights are the main one here. So WannaCry was a hugely successful, I don't mean that it was good, but hugely prolific ransomware attack that knocked out not just the NHS, but all sorts of infrastructure across the world. It's a known vulnerability that requires a patch, but sadly, even though the patch was released before the NHS was attacked, a lot of trusts didn't apply that patch. That could be because, I don't know, it could be an MRI scanner that relies on an old Windows XP computer, so you can't apply the patch because it's too out of date. That can happen. Or it could be that they just haven't got the personnel infrastructure because they're too tightly stretched. There can be all sorts of reasons why people don't install these patches. But we need to know what a patch is. A patch is just some software designed to mitigate a vulnerability. So what's a vulnerability? It's where you're vulnerable. It's where your code, your computer system can be taken over or exploited by somebody. What's a patch? It just closes that vulnerability, makes it secure again. So it can be for financial reasons. That can also have legal implications. So if somebody breaks into an airline and steals people's personal information, then obviously there's a financial implication for the people whose credit card details have been stolen, but there's also a financial implication for the company because they should have kept all of that secure. So they had to provide compensation. Sometimes cyber attacks are not targeted. It just goes out and it spreads prolifically, and anybody might be a victim. Sometimes attacks can be hugely, narrowly targeted. They try and hide themselves as much as possible unless they're attacking a known target. And we'll look at an example of that later this lesson. So if we want to know what malware is, the Latin root of it is mal, which is bad. So if you say in French, ça va, you'll say pas mal, not bad. Mal is bad and ware is short for software. bad software, bad code. It can be any of these, and we're going to look at all of these in details. So anti-malware is against bad software. So anything that tries to detect it, to destroy it, to lock it up and keep it safe so that no one can access it, is all anti-malware. Anti-malware is bigger than antivirus. Antivirus is one form of anti-malware. If you detect a virus, most viruses leave a trace. So we've got that COVID analogy to deal with. A COVID vaccine will work by looking for telltale signs of a virus and then attacking it. So that's how an antivirus will work. Like, you have this heuristic analysis. You will track down some bad code, and then you'll attack it. You'll try and get rid of it. But that only works, obviously, if you know what the software is like. Before the vaccines were first discovered for COVID, we were relatively defenseless. But now that most people have a vaccine, most people would argue that we are much safer as a result. Not going to get into that debate today. This is mostly what we want to look at. I think it's much more fun to actually look at the examples today. What did I do with them? So yeah, in your P25 worksheet, do a little bit of research, please. Find out what type of attacks these were. Tell me what happened. Give me a web link and some details about it. So I will leave this thing up. So these are the different types of malware. It can be any of these. Try and work out which ones of these they are. Discuss what each of them are in a mo. If you're saying it's social engineering, well, tell me what social engineering is. If it is ransomware, then tell me what ransomware is. That's what this column means. And then specifically to this particular attack, tell me what happened and give me a web link to find out more information. So we're just going to show this video. I'm not going to include that in the video recording at the moment if you're watching from home, but I should give the answers to these ones just here. So we're getting to the end of the lesson. We've got about 10 minutes left at the moment. You need to make sure that you've gone through all of the questions on here by going through the parts in the video. We've got 3 different methods for detecting malware. We've got your signature detection, which relies on humans having detected it already and updating a database with all of the ways to detect a virus. You've got static heuristic analysis, which will try and decompile a program, look at the source code and spot potentially bad problems. And you've got dynamic heuristic analysis, which allows a program to run in a safe, controlled sandbox environment and then analyzes its behavior. So static looks at the source code, dynamic looks at the behavior as it runs. And then we've been told that the best anti-malware protection will look at all 3. So we've got signature, static, and dynamic heuristic analysis. When you've finished, you then go back and I didn't give you enough time to finish off this table. So look at some of these case studies. Some of these are fascinating. And then when you finished your Word document, make sure you save it and upload it to Half Term 5 Issues and Impact 1.